Trump has had a little bit of a meltdown over the situation in Iran and the Straits of Hormuz. Let's get into that.
So Trump went and praised Allah on Easter. Open
Yes, he did that too, which is great.
the fucking straight. You crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. The Iranians have success.
I will highlight the part that Asmongold skipped over. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day, Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. So basically, I'm not harping on the war crimes things like other people. They are war crimes, but Ukraine is bombing energy infrastructure, Russia's bombing energy infrastructure. Just that's happening just a tiny bit away, a little bit north of Iran. So I'm not going to harp on the war crimes aspects too much, but I will harp on the danger to the world economy. In that, I've said it hundreds of times, Iran can destroy all the oil infrastructure in the Gulf. You started bombing their power plant and their energy infrastructure, they are going to start retaliating. And they have more than enough weaponry. This is really short range for them. The most basic Shahed drones can cover this. And they can destroy all the oil infrastructure in this region, and that's 20% of the world's oil gone, poof, next 5 years. And $200 oil or more for the rest of us. It would really suck. So it's not too exciting to hear Trump make comments like that. But also just having read Trump's tweets for a long time and just being somewhat familiar, he's losing it. He's having a meltdown. Just open the fucking straits. This feels so weak, so desperate, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just a few days ago, he was telling us that the straits don't matter. It's the rest of the world's problem to open the Straits of Hormuz. Yeah, don't you remember that? And he tweeted out that if the rest of the world needs oil, then go get it. Go just take the straits. You can do it. U.S. has oil. We don't need to worry about. And then this weekend, he goes, open the fucking straits. Yeah, you see Trump is going senile or he's sick or... Yeah, I've heard those comments. I think it's stress. Pure up. This has got to be the most stressful situation in the world for him. I mean, it's basically, he knows he's finished politically, and with his ego, that's like a nightmare. And I think that he made a mistake to bomb Supreme Leader, and I think that's because he was misled by people around him. And since then, he has no good path. It's not like, that's one thing, I've never once claimed that there's a right course of action for Trump to take. If I was in his shoe at this point in time, I don't know what I'd do differently. I probably maybe wouldn't escalate. I'd take the L for the sake of the world and try to de-escalate, but I don't know if he even can, given the attitude of all political elite in the U.S. I don't think they'd let him just back down and surrender to Iran. So it's be a nightmare to be in his shoes. Of course, there's a huge part of that blame for letting himself be tricked into this war. And I will say trick because that video the other day, the leaked video where he told the UK Prime Minister that the war would be over in 3 days. That means he honestly believed the war would be over in 3 days. And if he honestly believed that, a lot of people got together to trick him and told him bad info. His fault for surrounding himself with those people that lied to him? Yep. His fault for believing the lies? Yep. But I'm not going to let the liars off the hook either.
Living in hell, just watch. Praise be to Allah. The Iranians have successfully recovered a used American toothpaste and boxers. Is this what they've been reduced to? The Iranian media is going to say that American forces have been destroyed so totally that no traces remain of any of the bodies, and the only thing that's left is their toothpaste and underwear. That's how powerful the Iranian military...
But, why? What the hell is the deal with the underwear? Why did our pilots leave behind the underwear? Yeah, the underwear is strange.
It truly is. Bro, they have him, dude. This is so sad. It's actually so sad. You're tweeting on the dead Supreme Leader's account. Just let the guy rest, okay? And yeah, they blew it the fuck up. What a big surprise. Obviously, they did. This is apparently what it was.
Early morning hours of April 5th, 2026, the rescue package went in deep. That's when Iranian forces, who had been hunting them relentlessly, closed a hard on the extraction site, triggering a massive firefight. U.S. Special Operations unleashed a high volume of heavy suppressive fire, fighting with everything they had so that others may live.
I wonder if they're gonna I bet they won't. What is it even like whenever you're fighting these guys? I bet they probably use the same tech that they used with Maduro. And so I wonder if anything would even work.
Warriors from the USA held the line. They protected the colonel and
I wonder if there were drones. Honestly, if there weren't drones in this area, we have from pictures, like on Karg Island there are drones, FPV drones. But if I was Iranian, I would have been searching for this pilot with drones. If any drone operators I have, I'd set up bases near the area we suspect they are and have them fly out drones. And like that, if there's a Black Hawk helicopter that comes in, one of those drones goes to greet it. That's if I was Iranians, but I'm not the Iranians.
And kept the fight under control. The rescue force, now with the freed colonel, rendezvoused at the remote, austere Ford airfield, but two of the MC-130Js got bogged down in the soft sand, wheels sinking in with no safe way out. With Iranian forces closing in, there was zero time to waste. U.S. Special Operations teams rigged demolition charges and destroyed the aircraft in place. The call went out right away. 3 replacement aircraft came in, loaded the entire force, including the stabilized colonel, and exfiltrated everyone safely out of Iran and back to friendly airspace. Mission complete, no loose ends left behind, proving once again why America's military...
Well done to U.S. Honestly, I think Trump is utterly screwed in this war. That doesn't mean I want to see U.S. pilots captured and maybe killed. Probably captured. I think pretty sure they keep them alive for leverage and propaganda purposes. Anyway, that's one crisis for the United States over until they shoot down our next plane, which might happen Tuesday if we do this huge bombing campaign. We'll have to see about that. Anyway, I really just have to go back to this tweet on Trump's part. It's also an extension of the 48-hour deadline. You remember from yesterday, the 48-hour ultimatum that he issued on Saturday? Well, he's now extended that to... I believe 8 p.m. on Tuesday is now deadline. So 48 hours from Sunday. So a mini taco. Mini Trump always chickens out. Unfortunately, given the language of this tweet and the fact that it's now his third time setting this 48-hour ultimatum, he must know that his tweets will lose all credibility if he doesn't follow through on this. And he will have to, because Iran is there's no way in hell they're opening the Straits of Hormuz. And let's see. Moving on. Just in, Strait of Hormuz traffic reaches the highest level since the war began. And Nux Taku thinks this is a good thing because...
Strait of Hormuz traffic reaches highest levels since the war began. So for those of you paying attention, that means the IRGC Navy has lost total control. That means that...
Anyone who's been following this channel for a while, this stream for a while, knows that that isn't exactly the case. They're letting more ships through from friendly countries. And more countries are choosing to buy oil in Wong and pay the toll. So more countries are complying with Iran, and that's why Iran's letting them through. There are no ships passing without Iran's permission. None. It isn't losing control of the straits. Because this is what Nuxtaku is saying. They're losing control of states. They aren't. Straits are still closed to all American and Israeli and their allied ships.
The strait is opening up. It's looking really, really bad for these motherfuckers.
Do you hear that? He thinks the strait's opening up. What type of absolute copium is Nux inhaling? I'm shocked. He usually has somewhat decent takes, except when it comes to Israel, unfortunately. There he has a pretty solid bias that influences his mindset, understandably so. But still, even with his bias because of that, to think that straits are actually opening up, that's insane. But that brings us to an actually interesting story. Just in, US and Israel bomb petrochemical facilities in Iran. Yeah, so you know that 48-hour deadline, Israel is already attacking oil infrastructure in Iran. And you know what's going to happen because of that, or what has already happened because of that.
Hello, and welcome back to...
Iran attacks energy infrastructure across UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Of course. We hit their oil infrastructure, petrochemical, and they respond by hitting petrochemical facilities across the Gulf. That is how it works. An eye for an eye. Every time, same day.
Now,
I mean, he is never mentioning that it's an eye for an eye. That every time we bomb a petrochemical facility, petrochemical facilities are bombed in other Gulf states. Every time it happens. Nux never mentioned that. He just covers the damage in Iran. And so he's not covering the devastation to the oil market or the global economy that's happening because of these attacks. If US and Israel hadn't attacked any infrastructure or oil facilities, Iran wouldn't have done it either. They're being very consistent in doing an eye for an eye. We attack a bank. They attack financial centers throughout the Gulf states. They use our target list, turn around, find the same targets in Gulf states, and they go after those.
just in, U.S. and Israel bomb petrochemical facilities in Iran. People don't realize how big this winning is.
How big this winning is. Look at how big this winning is. It's just mutual destruction. Yeah, we can level all of Iran's energy infrastructure if we want. Yes, true. They can do the same. They can level every oil infrastructure throughout the Gulf without any problem. They have tens of thousands of Shahed drones, and it would take a fraction of that to level all the oil infrastructure throughout the Gulf. So it's insane. Next then gets into another scary point in just 1 second.
Israel received approval from the U.S. to strike Iran's energy as...
Do you hear those terrifying words? Israel received approval from the U.S. to strike Iran's energy assets. That's why that petrochemical facility was burning in earlier in this video. That is the oil markets going up in flames. That is the global economy crashing into a Great Depression. Because we've only Israel just bombed one petrochemical facility, and this is Iran's response to just that one petrochemical facility. When they bomb more, Iran will destroy more across the Gulf, and the week or two there'll be nothing left. $200 oil. The Strait of Hormuz won't matter at that point anymore. Well, it'll matter for the Gulf states because they still need to bring in food and products, but for the global economy at least, it won't matter because there'll be nothing to get out of the Gulf because all the pumping facilities for oil will be gone. But look how happy he is about this.
It's, what?
At least aren't you happy for him that he's this happy, even if he's deluded and he doesn't understand just how much this is the world economy dying, what you just said here. It's been an eye for an eye, same day, throughout the war so far. We haven't been able to stop it. Anything we destroy in Iran, they destroy in the Gulf states, and we haven't been powerless to stop it. So if we escalate this way, they'll do the same, and bye-bye the oil market.
Oh, Israel getting approval from the U.S. before doing things? Damn, can't believe this. Bro, this is insane.
Well, the issue I wouldn't look at here is not the approval, it's the fact that what is getting approved that's the problem. Real problem.
This is honestly crazy watching it happen and unfold in real time. Just these people fucking up dramatically again and again.
People fucking up dramatically? That would be, see these flags here? These two here? Those are the people fucking up. It's not Iran escalating and choosing to start bombing energy infrastructure. That's Israel and the United States. And I'll just mention this here, that he doesn't cover correctly again, understandably so, to an extent.
Most of the terrorist attacks in the region are actually run by Palestinians. They're just an incredibly violent people, objective. Paid for by the United States, savagely violent. Anyway, this was Arabs.
Okay.
I mean, all right. Now, again, they do this too. Concentration, extermination, world or something. No! As drug rehab viral. Like, I guess they do wrong plane, and we don't know where the plane.
But don't worry, we'll find.
By like,
Well, the point. Let me try that again. Maybe I didn't let it play long enough. Sure, there's a right time stamp.
Most of the terrorist attacks in the region are actually run by Palestinians. They're just an incredibly violent people, objectively. I mean,
Yeah, they are violent Palestinians, but to say that they're objectively violent, that's just.
Israel literally passed a law to execute terrorists.
Here we go. There we go.
Murder people, and the UN was like, no!
No, they passed a law to execute Palestinian terrorists. That means Jewish terrorists, and there are settlers, Jewish settlers going in and like murdering Palestinians. They are Jewish terrorists. This law can't be used against them. So if a Jewish settler goes in and murders some innocent people in a Palestinian settlement, they won't get executed. But if the family of whoever that guy kills comes back and kills the settler that murdered his family, well, he's a terrorist and he'll be executed. One-sided execute. One side gets executed by Israel, the other doesn't. That is what Israel has done. And watch how Nux takes it.
This is racist against Palestinians.
Yes, only executing the Palestinians that murder or commit terrorism, but not executing the Jewish people that do it. That is I don't know, racist. It's it's racist, basically.
What do you think that fucking says about Palestinians? All right, now again, they do this.
No, passing that law to only execute one ethnic party, that says a lot about the Israeli side, unfortunately. Anyway, I think that's enough Nuxtaku for now. Let's go to a more reasonable source.
Relative to Russia, the United States is now furious. The administration is now furious with what it is increasingly seeing as the betrayal by its NATO allies. Not only are these...
In other words, there's a serious rift between the United States and Europe right now over Iran. And, it's not surprising, actually.
Allies refusing to provide anything more than very tepid verbal support for the United States in the middle of this conflict.
Europe had his hand full with Ukraine. That was their war. Now, the United States is going to start this war in Iran when the war in Ukraine isn't finished at all, and all the weapons are still needed for Ukraine. It's a betrayal of sorts. The United States betrayed Europe by attacking Iran because we'd agreed to support them. I'm not at all for the Ukraine war. I think it should end as soon as possible. The United States should not support it. But the relationship between EU and United States was we were on board for the Ukraine war and we were selling weapons to Europe for Ukraine, and we'd agreed to do that. Now we're reneging on that because we decided to start this Iran war. And European leaders have got to be pissed. I mean, they're going to put boots on the ground anywhere. It's going to be Ukraine. They don't. If they were to do any type of military action against Iran, that would. They don't have their militaries are paltry as it is. It would require everything they have, and they'd have nothing for Ukraine. And all the plans we hear floated around from Europe about ceasefires, whatever, require European boots on the ground in Ukraine. And they're pipe dreams. That'll never happen. But they still, they won't have the option.
But some are now becoming increasingly openly critical. Some are referring to the entire war against Iran as illegal. Some are closing their airspace to American military flights, engaged in the operations
Spain and Italy, I believe.
in the Persian Gulf and against Iran, and all of them, without exception, have refused to send military forces to support the United States
Again, EU is in a war against Russia via Ukraine. They have their hands full.
in this war.
And Trump is not willing to recognize that. He thinks they should drop their support for Ukraine and come rush and bail him out of the war of choice he started that any sane individual would never have done. Yeah, no, they have their hands full.
Now, the president clearly has concluded that this proves that, so far as the United States is concerned, the Europeans are not there when the Americans need them. So,
Well, Trump knew that, or should have known that. He knows about Ukraine. He knows that the entire EU is obsessed about Ukraine. How could he possibly expect them to drop that and then come rush to his aid, send thousands of their troops to die for him to open the Strait of Hormuz? It's insane.
why, in that case, should the United States come forward and spend resources and money and time helping the Europeans when they run into trouble? For example, in the conflict concerning Ukraine.
Your EU didn't run into trouble with the conflict regarding Ukraine. The United States led them into trouble in Ukraine. Zelensky is our our U.S. puppet government in Ukraine. The deep state. Maybe not Trump, but definitely the deep state. And we definitely led Europe into this Ukraine war under Biden. And so Trump's thinking on this is completely warped.
And, well, his words, his complaints, his criticisms about the Europeans, there are reports that he has said, privately so I understand, that his relationship with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, has now completely broken down beyond any possibility of retrieval, for example. But anyway, these statements of Trump's, this anger he has towards the Europeans, is shared by members of his administration, perhaps unsurprisingly.
Well, I think many of Trump's administration, rather than being deep state, are just propagandized by the U.S. media complex. That means they honestly believed it would be 3 days. Some of them, in other words, some of the people that told Trump it would be 3 days were themselves deceived. Some of them probably knew that it was bullshit. You have to go case by case.
But I get the sense that within the United States, it's also shared, even by some critics of the war, by people who think that the war in itself is wrong. Now, one of the people who has spoken out very critically about the failure of the Europeans to come to the support of the United States.
Right now, the UK is busy manufacturing Storm Shadow missiles, sneaking them into Ukraine, and then firing them at Russian oil infrastructure and energy infrastructure. That is the current project occupying UK. It's getting involved in Iran is a huge distraction from their little pet projects in Ukraine.
And who has in fact said that this failure calls into question the reality of the entire alliance between the United States and the Europeans, the extent to which this is actually an alliance with reciprocal obligations, is the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Now, what is interesting about that is that when Marco Rubio was Senator Rubio, he proposed a bill which was eventually passed by Congress in 2023, which made it illegal for the president to withdraw from NATO without the support of Congress.
Isn't that hilarious? One of Trump's cabinet officials, who now shares Trump's position about NATO, EU members not fulfilling their role in NATO, Trump can't withdraw from NATO because of this resolution that was passed years ago.
Extending, I believe, to a two-third vote of support in the Senate. So here we
Yeah, a 2/3 support vote in the Senate withdrawing from NATO is not happening. Never.
have a senator who came up with a bill
Or at least not until the situation changes drastically from what it is today.
intended to prevent a future President Trump from taking the United States out of NATO. That senator is now President Trump's Secretary of State. And he is also now saying things that appear to be extremely critical of NATO and which, well, may give the impression that if the United States did indeed quit NATO, he at least would not be so sorry. In Europe, we are now starting to
Karma is
see
a bitch.
matching comments from some European leaders and European political movements. In Germany, the AfD is now calling for the removal of all American troops and bases from German territory. Not quite the end of Germany's alliance with the United States, and not technically the same as a German withdrawal from NATO. But of course, an enormous
It would, yeah, it'd be an enormous rupture of the relationship.
step in that direction, given how centrally important to the viability of NATO the alliance between the United States and Germany actually is. And, well, I repeat my view, which is, of course, the same view as that expressed by the Vice Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, which I discussed in a program I made 2 days ago. I still believe that there is no proximate likelihood of the United States quitting NATO, but certainly it is the case that the alliance, NATO, is under greater stress now than it has ever been.
And that's just what I wanted to highlight, that NATO is under stress.
As we, the people in Iran, because of the attacks that are happening, are leaning toward the continuation of the war, because they know Donald Trump said something so stupid about hitting Iran, bringing them back to the Stone Age. This doesn't work. This is not the way that you communicate with the Iranian people.
Yeah, the people protesting against the regime here, an outside U.S. president threatening to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, they're not cheering. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help Iran. They're completely against that. It just makes them angry, and it makes them not want to rise up against the regime.
With Iranian culture, you see the repercussion of that, and all the Iranian people getting, backing the IRGC and Iranian army to fight back as long as possible.
In starting this war, and the way he's conducted this war, as in going after non-military targets like the bridge in Tehran or the accidental schoolgirl bombing, he's turned the public against the United States. He's strengthened the regime. I am sure now that the IRGC has more support than it did before the war started. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Well, I think, Colonel, what is happening, the underestimation on the part of the Trump administration is just mind-boggling. I don't know what to call it, because they say they destroyed everything. And we've seen...
Yeah, you have Trump say they have no more air defenses left, and next day is the most catastrophic day for the air defense in decades, where you lose 2 fighter jets, 2 helicopters, and a bunch of other aircrafts. Oh, it was terrible. And he turned his statement, they have no air defense, into an utter joke.
The Iranian missiles hitting one of the main factories of, these drones in Israel today.
Yeah, that's a big deal, by the way. The factory that makes the Israelis' air defense was struck. One of their biggest defense factories. And that's going to hurt them a lot.
And these are not, simple and, the capabilities of Iranian ballistic missiles are not something to be ignored by the President of the United States.
They've been highly effective so far.
But he tries to picture the situation as though he's going to end the conflict. He's going to have the final, say in this conflict. That's not the case on the part of Iran.
One reason Trump acts that way is because he needs that to happen. the only way, given the utter disaster everything has been so far, the only way he gets saved from this is if things end exactly the way he wants. If Iran actually accepted his 15-point proposal, he would actually have a victory. He would actually be able to weather there's a huge amount of financial damage and via the oil market that's coming to the United States, even if the conflict ended right today. But if it ended right now, right this minute, he'd be able to weather that. If it ended today with Iran agreeing to this 15-point proposal, he would survive politically. It's absolutely impossible that happens, but I'm saying that's the reason Trump is believing on trying to make it. It's the only thing he can believe. His only viable way out of this, surviving politically, is the war ending immediately in Iran's complete surrender. And anything that other than that is going to be a loss for Trump. Just the scale of that loss changes depending on circumstances, but it's going to be a loss for him. He's finished politically in any other scenario.
They say we will end the conflict the way we want this conflict to end, this war to end.
Well, and that's exactly, you have these dueling narratives. And you mentioned President Trump had said on Truth Social about knocking out that bridge in Tehran. This is what he said last night after having posted that. And then again this morning, he said, our military is the greatest and most powerful by far anywhere in the world, hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. New regime leadership knows what has to be.
That makes me think that Trump is going down the route that if I'm going down, I'm taking Iran with me. Problem is, Iran's position is if we're going down, we're taking the Gulf with us. So Trump takes out Iran going down, and Iran takes out the Gulf states going down. And the Gulf states, well, when they go down, that takes down the world economy. And that's the fucking place we're in today.
Be done and has to be done fast. President Trump. And then this morning he added, with a little more time, we can easily open the Strait of Hormuz, take the oil, and make a fortune. And it would be a gusher for the world. When people in Iran see that, even people who didn't like the regime, maybe even that hated the regime that was running from the Ayatollah Khamenei before, I mean, from what I'm gathering from talking to some Iranian expats, is that even those people are begrudgingly saying, no, we've got to rally around because it's the nation of Iran that's been attacked, not just the regime. And when statements like that I'm going to destroy you and take your oil, I mean, that can't help but just steal the resolve of the Iranian people, doesn't it?
I mean, the protesters, they want to take over the government and still have Iran's oil infrastructure intact. That's what they want. Getting the government, but Iran's oil infrastructure is destroyed. They don't want that. That'd be a disaster for the country.
Exactly. What Iranians are feeling right now is that this is the moment that you have to fight it till the end, because if you don't end it here, they're going to come back. They're going to hit you back again and again.
Yeah, that's what the last year has taught us. Is Israel and United States went after Iran last year. There was ceasefire. They just went after them again this year. And yeah, I'm sure everyone in Iran is convinced if there's any ceasefire without a solution to the conflict, a couple months from now, Trump will decide to bomb Iran again. I mean, he'll just, keep bombing their leaders, eventually something good for us will happen, right?
Again, and Iran doesn't want that. Iran doesn't want to start a new war again and again. And the whole concept of the Strait of Hormuz is based on that. You have to manage the Strait of Hormuz. You know, for such a long time, Iran was trying to negotiate with these Arab states in the Persian Gulf. I would say almost 30 years ago, the supreme leader of Iran said to these countries that the American bases in your countries is not to help you, to protect you, is to protect Israel. And the outcome of this war and what is happening with the case.
That's why Israel is only going after countries that don't have U.S. bases. Although there's talk that they would have gone after Turkey next. Well, once they run out of enemy companies without U.S. bases, they'll go after the biggest competitor that has a U.S. base, Turkey. But I don't think they're going to be able to take out Iran, so that's not worth talking about right now.
Case of the Strait of Hormuz is the same message. Do you want to be closer to the United States? Do you want to have a security architecture for the region that each and every country in the region would benefit from that? This decision should be one of the most important issues for these Arab states in the Persian Gulf, because Iran, as time goes by, Iran is not going to let the United States put in back the radars to these countries. They can put it back, but they're going to be destroyed again and again.
Exactly. They'll be destroyed again and again. Iran has satellite support from surveillance satellites from Russia and China. They'll know if something gets put back. And basically, you have the entire intelligence of Russia and China backing up Iran, feeding them intel. So, yeah, our ability to do anything without them knowing is quite small.
Again, that's why I don't see that's a viable choice for the United States to go in that direction. So, what would be the alternative for the Arab states? Are they gonna get closer to Iran? Are they gonna understand the reality of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz? Or they're gonna choose what Benjamin Netanyahu was suggesting them to make new pipelines, going from Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea, then to Israel. I don't see that happening. Just moments before coming to this podcast, we've learned, unconfirmed, by the way, news coming from Syria. Syria is using rockets against Israel. They're trying.
Well, Israel has occupied a huge chunk of land in the south of Syria, so they're an occupying force. I don't fault them for attacking Israel.
To hit Israel with rockets. This is not something. This is unusual.
Israel would get attacked a lot less if they didn't have this obsession about taking the land of other people.
Usual, because we know what's going on. The whole concept of defeating the acts of resistance is not there anymore. The acts of resistance, you see the way that Lebanon is fighting the United States, Iraq is fighting, we have Yemen joining the fight, and right now Syria, Israel, they have this war against Iran, they were hitting Syria as well. This is not something to be controlled. Sooner or later, even HTS, the head of HTS that is running Syria right now, would understand that Israel has no understanding of their position in Syria. That's why they're hitting back. If these news, the Cradle reported on that.
And you mentioned something about the bypass route. I wanted to toss this map up here because Saudi Arabia has been forced to curtail 25% of its oil production due to the Iranian strikes on its facility. And the Houthis, they have not yet started targeting Yanbu tankers, which is the Red Sea port there for Saudi Arabia. One Houthi missile at Yanbu and the last major bypass route goes dark. This is according to Jack Pendarelli. The checkpoints. Hormuz closes, world scrambles for bypasses. Bypasses get threatened. The world has nowhere to go. And I just wonder if you have any understanding or if you heard.
In other words, the oil shock could get a lot worse. I hear Iran has gone after this bypass already and taken it offline. So once they go after the rest of these.
Anything about whether Iran would strike any of these.
On another note, I hear that they've let Iraqi ships through recently. There's Iraqi militia that are allied with Iran. So Iraq and the U.S. bases have been basically forced out of Iraq. So Iraq has realigning itself with Iran, and that's why Iraqi ships are now going through the Straits of Hormuz.
Pipelines, or whether the Houthis might hit some of these.
Which is a tiny bit of good news for the oil markets.
These other ports in the Red Sea, and what that could do if people try to bypass the Strait of Hormuz that route.
I don't see Iran doing this right now. Even we had some attacks on desalination plants in Kuwait, which was today we've learned from IRGC. They said it was in Iran. The attacks was not Iranian missile or drones. It seems that Israel tried to do some false flag operation in Kuwait. Iran's policy right now is not desalination, is not,
Yeah, okay, that makes sense because I'd heard that there were desalination plants that were bombed, like you just said. But the only time Iran bombed desalination plants was after the United States, the same day as the United States bombed a desalination plant in Iran. They went after one in Bahrain, and eye for an eye. And since we haven't bombed any in Iran after that, I wouldn't expect Iran to go that route. So, yeah, I think it's false flag. I mean, just Iran has been so precise. I just showed you the story. We bombed a petrol oil facility, and they bombed one the same day. That's what they do, an eye for an eye.
Pipes, these pipelines who are going to, passing Saudi Arabia, going to the Red Sea, that could be the next level. Yemenis, Ansarullah, they have not joined actively into the conflict. They have not joined yet. There are 2 times or 3 times they tried to hit the northern and the southern part of Israel. And that's all. They're not actively in this war. But if Saudi Arabia together with UAE trying to do something, somehow I would say escalating the conflict, then you're going to see Yemenis or Ansarullah coming into the fight actively. I think the situation in
And the risk of that is the Houthis are here. And here is this little choke point, which is just, this one's important because of all the oil that goes in and out of here. This one here is important because it is the way global commerce passes. From China to Europe, it goes through here. From Europe, it's one of the most important waterways in the country, in the world. The alternative is to go all the way around Africa. It's a huge detour. So Houthis get involved, this gets closed, it makes everything worse for the global economy. Not only do you have higher fuel prices for ships, but ships now have to take this huge detour. It pushes up the price of a huge number of goods. It's not good for us.
Kuwait and Bahrain is critical right now because you see the public opinion somehow just boiling in these two countries. And Saudi Arabia, somewhere in the middle, they don't know what to do so far. They tried to talk with the Russian president. Yesterday, we learned that.
Thing is, they're trapped because they're tied at the hip with the United States, and they don't control the United States. They are at the mercy of Trump, like Trump's decision to escalate and that tweet he made about bombing the bridges and energy. Yeah, an eye for an eye. They know that their countries are going to be hit equally hard as to anything the United States does in Iran, and they're screaming at Trump not to do this, but Trump's doing it anyway.
I don't know what was the basics. What was the main?
And they're going to hold a grudge about that because all the damage that gets done because Trump is throwing a temper tantrum, they're going to hold a grudge.
Objective of that phone call between Saudi Arabia, but we can speculate that it was all about the Strait of Hormuz and the situation with the war and how Russia can bring some sort of sanity to what's going on. But Russia's position,
Russia's ability to do stuff is actually limited because both the United States and Iran are at such opposite extremes for negotiations. Trump needs complete surrender of Iran. Nothing else will save him politically. He needs immediate, like today, complete surrender of Iran, giving him everything he wants. And then when all the pain from this oil shock hits the United States and we get higher inflation in the United States, we get job losses and the economy is hurting, he said, look, I know it hurts, but I saved the day. I defeated Iran. I got rid of their nuclear program. They completely surrendered to me. So yes, there's a pain, but it was worth it. And if he got complete surrender of Iran today, yes, he might actually legitimately be able to claim that, because it'd be insane to pull off that type of stunt, given how terrible the U.S. position is militarily and economically.
so far is to support Iran, because after all, what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz is benefiting Russia, and because they have a lot of.
Yeah, and the other problem, reason Russia can help is Iran is its Pope basically was killed by the U.S. and Israel, and they are determined to extract a severe political cost to the United States because of that, and they're keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed is their way to accomplish that. And they're not going to be excited by Russia trying to mediate negotiations that might end that and get the U.S. off the hook.
Leverage right now. They have to sell it. They're selling their oil at much higher prices right now. That's good for Russia. And on the other hand, Iran is a strategic partner of Russia. They don't want Iran to be defeated or their importance being diminished in the Persian Gulf. So I would assume that Russia would say to Saudi Arabia that if you want something, a security architecture, you have to come to Iranians, you have to talk with them, you have to manage that, you have to reach some sort of understanding. It seems that China is playing an active.
Thing is, honestly, what the U.S. wants and what deep state wants, what the establishment in the United States wants, is dominance over Iran. That's what we want. That's the reason we don't want to coexist with Iran. We want to dominate Iran. We want an Iran that agrees to sell oil in dollar, to host U.S. bases like the rest of the Gulf states. Yes, that'll be part of it. If we do put in a puppet regime, and we want them to invest all their cash in the U.S. economy like the other Gulf states do. Gulf states sell their oil in dollars, then put all their money in the stock market and the bond market in the United States. We want Iran to do that too. That's what we want. We're not okay with coexisting with Iran, but Iran does its own thing in terms of the oil market and its investment. No, we want a puppet state. And yeah, I don't see any negotiations delivering that.
Role behind the scene. We're not hearing that much from China, but they're doing something. They're doing actually a lot. They're talking a lot with both parties in the Persian Gulf. I'm not talking about with the United States. And the whole concept, I think, after all, the outcome of what's going on in Iran gonna manage the Strait of.
It'd be interesting. One thought I just had is some type of diplomatic coup by China, maybe, to like talk to all these Gulf states that have U.S. base and says, okay, we've talked to Iran, and like for China to negotiate with Iran and the Gulf states without talking to the United States, and then have a solution to the crisis. Like it says, okay, we've negotiated with Iran. China tells the Gulf states, we can open the Strait of Hormuz, but you have to kick out the U.S. bases. Kick out all the U.S. troops, and then Iran will let your ships through. And those Gulf states, faced with the destruction of their economy or agreeing to this, realign with China. It's a really long shot, at least at the moment. But it becomes more real the more the United States keeps floundering the way it is.
The foremost together with Oman, with the government in Oman. And then you see even today, one of the priorities before this war happening was how to get rid of the sanctions, the U.S. sanctions on Iran. Today, that's not the case anymore. At least
by taking control of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has basically lifted the sanctions on itself. It's countries can't afford to sanction Iran anymore. They need oil isn't coming from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all these places. It's only coming from Iran, and so countries are even if the United States hadn't lifted sanctions, countries would have lifted them themselves because they need the oil.
This is not among the first priorities of this war, the outcome of this war. The main objective right now is how to manage the Strait of Hormuz, how to put pressure on these countries who are using the Strait of Hormuz to use something else, yuan or a new, even Iranian currency to pay Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a long-run game on the part of Iranians.
Yeah.
Militarily,
they want to realign the region with China. That's what Iran's trying to do. Because they're demanding payment in yuan, not Russian ruble. So they're choosing the yuan, and it makes sense. China is the bigger economy; it makes sense to go with them. But Iran has huge relationship with Russia too. Realigning to any currency other than the U.S. would be positive for Russia also.
I would say they are prepared to continue this war as long as it takes. They are not in rush to continue this war, and even with the invasion, that it's part of the plan. It seems that the ultimate escalation would be the invasion. I don't know what the United States wants to do with 50,000 soldiers.
I don't know either.
I would say
I'm not sure even Trump knows what he plans to do with all those soldiers. He just knows he has to do something because he's on a losing course right now. He is destined to failure. His political legacy destroyed if things just continue as they are. So some type of Hail Mary pass involving these U.S. troops, he's going to try at some point. Maybe after this latest ultimatum runs out.
They have, the day before yesterday, we've learned 7 million people, they have registered their names. They want to be part of this. If the United States invades Iran, they want to fight the United States in the southern part of Iran. This is the sentiment of Iranian people right now. This is what Donald Trump.
Every time we bomb Iran, we're killing someone's family member. Someone's father, someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's sister. It's, yeah. There's people hold grudges. I'm not surprised there are so many people signing up to fight the United States.
Trump and his administration they have failed to understand what is the outcome of what they're doing in Iran, what they have been doing in Iran.
And
In
you
the
know,
last
you mentioned
30 days.
you mentioned something, President. I want to go down that path a little bit. You mentioned something President Trump said in his State of the or not State of the Union, but his national televised broadcast on Wednesday. That basically he repeated this theme many times that Iran is all but defeated. We've knocked out all their stuff. All their leaders are dead. All their capabilities. The Navy, you know, he ad infinitum. But then we find out here. This is CNN is releasing that 50% of Iran's missile launchers and thousands of attack drones remain intact. And there's some question whether it's even as low as 50%, maybe
Might be higher than 50%. If I had to wager higher or lower, I'd say higher.
higher that's remaining. But Iran's arsenal, despite daily U.S. and Israeli attacks, U.S. intelligence also shows a large percentage of Iran's coastal defenses and cruise missiles intact, which is what.
Yeah, because their coastline hasn't been attacked yet. Why would they be depleted? They're buried deep in cliffs where U.S. bombs can't reach. The only way for them to get depleted is for them to get used, shooting at targets.
Allows them to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. And then we also have this, I think it's just today, by the, this was yesterday, by one of the IRGC leaders. He said, our main strategic weapons production centers are ones you cannot find at all. Even if you could find them, you have no possibility of damaging them. A negligible part of Iran's ammunition has been damaged or used. And a ground invasion, as you said a second ago, he says, we are waiting impatiently. We are waiting for the Americans to begin ground operations because we will teach them a lesson so that they will never again intend to aggress us, even the weakest country in the world. So is this just bluster? Are these alleged 7 million people who have signed up? Is that just something that's for propaganda? Or do you think that it's actual
No, they're mostly, they're not ordinary people, Colonel. These people, 7 million, they were part of the military, or they have recently concluded their military service in the army or in the IRGC. These are not ordinary people like, a 50 years old guy going, I want to fight. These are people who are capable of fighting if they decide to go in that direction. They can underground. Iran is so, Colonel, Iranian ground army is so trained, it's so prepared. It's one of the, the most mighty part of the Iranian army. I don't know what is the information on the part of Americans, but I know that because I did my military service in Iran in the Navy. So we were in contact with the ground forces. We know how they act, they move, how they're so professional. They know what they're doing, and they have been fighting not only, in the region against ISIS, and they were in Lebanon, they were in Syria, they were fighting for such a long time. They have a lot of experience on the ground. If you remember, during the war against ISIS or Daesh, as they...
There was also the Iraq-Iran war. It was a long time ago, but I'm sure there's still veterans of that are in the Iran army, or at least are instructors in the Iran army. So they still have veterans, real war veterans that can, I'm sure the Iran army is tough. I mean, they basically won the Iraq-Iran war, except then the U.S. gave chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein, and he started using them. And then it finally ended when the United States shot down a civilian aircraft, and Tehran decided, it's not worth continuing to fight Iran. The costs are too high. And considering how crazy the United States can be in terms of bombing civilian stuff, it's might have been the right decision.
They call it in Iran. Mostly what Iran was doing was underground. Russia was doing, from the air, bombing ISIS in Iran underground, destroying ISIS. These people know how to fight underground. I don't know what is the main objective of the United States if it goes underground. They're going to be...
with Iran's huge networks of tunnels, that must be a really special military skill, fighting. Every army knows to fight indoors somewhat, but fighting in tunnels, fighting in caves, that is a very niche military skill that I think probably the Iran has more experience with than any other military, because they built these tunnels, and of course they've war-gamed fighting in those tunnels. They have to. They know that if they're attacked, enemy forces would try to go in and seize their missile cities on the ground. And so I know they have a plan to defend those tunnels.
They have to be prepared for such a, I think it would be brutal. The fight would be brutal. And
it's crazy how Trump's asking Gulf countries for money to support a war he started. Yeah, and he's asking them for money when his war has cut off their oil income. A great time to be asking them for money. It's crazy. Crazy.
Have to understand that at least.
Well, one wonders if that's the case or not. There is. I want to touch on something you mentioned a minute ago about some of these assassinations that you said. Well, that seems like if President Trump was wanting to make a deal, seems like somebody in Israel was not wanting him to make a deal and continues to assassinate people. There was a really.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that happened. Israel assassinated the retired Iranian official that was reportedly setting up negotiations between J.D. Vance and Iranians in Pakistan. They assassinated that guy. Of course they did. He was a retired guy who wasn't in the military. Oh, and I just remembered, they tried to assassinate him. They bombed his house and killed his wife and injured him. So it's the same deal. He's not going to be setting up any negotiations after Israel bombs their house and killed his wife. Yeah, so that's shut down.
Interesting examination, a revelation this morning, an admission. I don't know if he meant to do it or not.
What do you think is the condition of the deep state right now with all this? Well, I think there is real chaos in the financial derivatives markets, in the oil markets, and they're managing that through pretty blatant market manipulation, like buying S&P futures, and then Trump makes an announcement that makes the markets jump and that type of thing. But this is not going according to their plan. I think there was maybe some wishful thinking on part of Deep State too. They had this Carney guy, this head of covert operations in Iran that was a Mossad agent. And I think they were hoping to have some type of regime change with him orchestrating things behind the scene, except he got picked up right after they bombed the supreme leader. So I think it's just like Ukraine. Ukraine was an attempt to balkanize Russia, to use Ukraine as a weapon to hurt Russia and to fracture the country. And this war is an attempt to basically do the same thing to Iran, to destroy it as a functioning country. And both places haven't gone as planned. I think it's the death throes of the U.S. deep state. And when I say death throes, I think those death throes will go on for a few more years. This is an 80-year, basically, since this really all began back in 1934, when the Gold Reserve Act. But that's when this conspiracy really, the birthplace of it, the conspiracy, when it started. So the dying phase is, I think we have a few more years. But yeah, things are not going according to Deep State plan. They needed to take out Iran, and so they went to war with Iran. Let's put it this way, I think it's just like Trump and this military invasion on the ground. Not doing anything, he knows he's lost. Strait of Hormuz remains closed, nothing changes, and he's finished politically if he does nothing. So he has to try something. That is the position of deep state. That's why I think they tricked Trump into this war. Is if nothing changed, they know the U.S. financial system and dollar and whatever is going down in the next few years. And but if they manage to take out Iran, they could keep everything going for a few more years. And they did it because they had to, because they can see the writing on the wall that things are ending. And so they launched this Iran war hoping it would go well, and it's not.
On American television, General Jack Keane was talking about President Trump's focus on getting this war done and why
they take out Iran and no one's in their way to create a tokenized economy. A tokenized economy that has, it has its own whole host of issues and problems. But taking out Iran means that Iran's oil income can be used to prop up the United States in the same way Saudi Arabia is. Saudi Arabia, not only does it sell its oil in U.S. dollars, it then invests those U.S. dollars into U.S. stock market and U.S. bonds, helping to fund the U.S. deficit. It's basically the majority of the profits from Saudi Arabia go right into United States Treasury. And I personally believe that everyone pretends that, yes, Saudi Arabia really owns all those U.S. treasuries they bought. But I think part of us propping up these undemocratic regimes in the Middle East is, you buy our treasuries and you never sell. I think, so it's basically, they just funnel money to the United States. If they could set that up in Iran too, Iran also has these huge oil reserves that aren't fully tapped. If they brought all that online, it would help prop up the United States and its deficit for another 3-4 years at least. And I think that's their optimistic dream, what their wishful thinking wanted.
May need to continue prosecuting it. And in this clip here, he's going to say that President Trump needs to listen to his commanders, and that's who's telling him it'll only take 2 or 3 more weeks to wrap this up. But pay close attention to who one of those 2 commanders are.
Crazy general soundbite incoming.
The president has always said this is a condition-based operation. I've assigned objectives for you to accomplish, and based on you accomplishing those objectives.
There's no plan to this war. None. Trump thought it would be over in 3 days. Any objectives he assigned, that was after regime change failed to materialize, after he bombed the supreme leader. And that's no way to run a war.
This will drive the length of it. He has been told by Prime Minister Netanyahu they need 3 weeks. He's been told by Admiral.
Have you seen the impact Australia has had because of the war? The worst problems with the Straits closure isn't even oil. It's cut off in fertilizer. I have mentioned this several times, and we covered downstream. 35% of the world's fertilizers came from the Gulf. Much bigger than the oil and the natural gas. But that problem takes longer to hit. It's not enough fertilizers, meaning that the crops that's going to be harvested in the fall and late summer is going to be smaller than normal. And so the shortage in food only hits really in the fall and the winter. It's like 9 months away. And so, but the oil shock, that's now. So we talk about the oil shock because that's what we see really hitting right now. Yes, people are going to starve in 9 months. And more people are going to, if it goes on another month past the planting season, and another 2 months, because you can still throw fertilizer on a month after and still receive most of the benefits. But let's say another 2 months, Straits of Hormuz still closed. Yes, this harvest is shot. It's not going to be normal size at all. It's going to be a fraction of 50% or less. And it's going to be just a huge spike in food prices, and poorer countries are going hungry. That's the way it is. And Australia is facing problems. It's not going to be one place that's going to starve. The places that starve are always the places where people are poor. The poor always starve. It's anytime you have a food shortage and starvation, anytime in human history, there is food readily available. So it's just the rich have the power to buy it and the poor don't. And so the poor starve. So even if Australia has a poor harvest, it's not Australia that's going to have a famine. It's the places that buy food from Australia. It's probably poor nations in Africa and in Asia and South America. They're going to suffer. Yeah.
Well, Bradley Cooper, he needs 2 weeks. That's the reason for the 2 to 3 weeks is taking place here, and he's going to let those assigned objectives.
I am born in Washington, D.C., and I spent most of my life on the East Coast, but I have lived when I was really young in Switzerland for 8 years, and then I also lived 2 years in Russia. That is more or less, but I've been mostly the East Coast. That's where I'm from.
Drive the completion of this operation, and that is the right thing to do. Let the commanders make these calls. They're not people in the White House to make the call, and that's the way you want a national leader behave in terms of working with their subordinates.
I mean, he says that Netanyahu told.
And nice to have you here also, Yomi Lucky.
Trump, that's the word he chose, told Trump that it would take 3 weeks to win. Now, you just described something that's a little bit different than that on the ground. Do you see any way, shape, or form that the Iranian country, the military, would be defeated from where it is right now in 3 weeks from now?
Colonel, it's so delusional. Like the war, when this war started, they said to these Persian Gulf Arab states, they said the war would be over in 4 days. You know, these people don't know what they're talking about, in my opinion.
They don't.
You have to see the reality of what's going on in Iran. Iran was fighting the United States. Why? the basic question would be, why are they trying to, what are they doing right now in Iran? The targets. I'm talking about the targets. What are they targeting? The latest one was a bridge, which was under construction, one of the biggest bridges in the.
It was a bridge that was supposed to be a bypass around Tehran and relieve most of the traffic in the city. It was 99% civilian use, and we bombed it. And yeah, it's everyone in Tehran has got to be furious about this. I mean, anyone who hates traffic, and yeah, it doesn't make them like us.
The Middle East. Why are they doing this? Because they don't know. They don't know what's going on in Iran. They don't have the intelligence.
No, and it's also just lashing out. That first weekend after the war started, U.S.-Israel bombs the desalination plant. It's just, maybe if we do this, it'll hurt them enough so they negotiate. But Iran doesn't talk. It just turns around and bombs the desalination plant in Bahrain. Next weekend, they bomb that oil refinery near Tehran and let that huge cloud of toxic smoke into the air, poisoning, like leading to acid rain. Yeah, they did that. And of course, Iran retaliated, attacking oil infrastructure across the Gulf. They tried attacking a bank, and US and Iran went after financial institutions in the Gulf and Israel. And it's just been that, okay, maybe if we try bombing this, it'll work and pressure them. And Trump, I can totally see it. Trump, ever since that first weekend where the war didn't end in 3 days like he expected, he's been like, to his advisors, fix this, end it, like make them surrender or make it end, give me a victory. And the U.S. military has been trying to do that, just throwing darts at the wall and seeing what hits. That is where we are. And as Trump has become increasingly frustrated that this keeps on dragging on, has no end in sight, he has to keep on making these promises that the war is about to end, and he has to make up this whole fiction about negotiations taking place, all to stabilize the market. He can clearly see prices at the gas pump rising, of course, as everyone knew they would. And he's increasingly, the way he talks to his advisors is getting louder, more frustrated, angrier, and he's saying, do something, do something. And that's why they've assembled these troops to try to do something. And this lashing out, going after the energy infrastructure, I think that's part frustration to just hurt them so they agree to talk or surrender to Trump. That's what he's thinking. And he knows they'll go after the Gulf states. He must know that at this point, since they've done an eye for an eye every time. And he's got to have been told. I mean, we didn't bomb another desalination plant after the first, and I'm sure that's why he knows that they go after similar. But he just, well, one thing. If he does do his carry out his ultimatum of bombing energy infrastructure and bridges and oil and everything across Iran, and oil retaliates and does the same across the Middle East, it will remove the Strait of Hormuz as a worry, because there's no oil coming out of the Persian Gulf, then it doesn't matter anymore if Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Then you just have to worry about 20% of the world's oil going offline permanently. But at least he doesn't have to worry about the Strait of Hormuz anymore. Even if the war ended now, I think the surrounding Arab nations still got attacked by Iran, and there will be tension. Oh, there will be tension. Even if the war ended now, it depends how it ends. Does it end with Iran still in control of the Straits of Hormuz, still imposing a toll on all ships from like Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states? They would hate that. They'd hate that so much. That means their oil has a premium on top of it. It has an extra cost, so they'll have to sell it for cheaper than Iran and the places that don't have that toll. And it means they'd have to sell their oil at a permanent discount, forced. And every time they did so, Iran would be collecting a toll and getting rich at their expense. So how this war ends is important, at least for the Gulf states. They want the Straits of Hormuz open so they don't get told. But right now, they're not even getting told. It's mostly only Iranian, and I guess Iraq now recently has had some oil being allowed through. But It's not much oil from the others is getting through at all. Even the only goal for Iran is to send a message to the world is that United States cannot dictate the world. It's all about the message. It's about a message and dictate. But to put it even simpler, it's just United States bomb Iran's supreme leader, their pope. And they want to make sure that the United States loses this war. That everyone across the world goes, yeah, the United States was idiotic for doing that they lost. And all they have to do that is hold the Strait of Hormuz closed for 6 months. They do that. Democrats win the midterms in the United States and impeach Trump. It's regime change in America. And that's why when I say I'm not optimistic about it ending soon, after 6 months, at that point, I think Iran would be ready. They'll be okay with negotiating because they will have already achieved their objective of fucking Trump over. And everyone will have seen that Trump lost this war at that point in time, if the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for 6 months. And so their biggest strategic objective, sending that message, like you said, Yomi Lucky, will have been accomplished. And then they will be interested in negotiating. And negotiations will start. Negotiations will be contentious because Iran might want to keep control over the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously the Gulf nations won't want that, and it'll be complicated. But they will at least get underway, I think, in like 6 months or so, give or take a month. They want him to look like a buffoon, even though he already looks like one. Well, he looked like a buffoon the first term, and he didn't start any stupid wars back then. So I think Trump looking like a buffoon isn't the issue. The issue is him bombing and kidnapping foreign leaders. That's the part that they really don't like. And that they're trying to send a message about. Trump has always been a buffoon, and by the way, I've supported that buffoon at various points because first term he wasn't able to do much because everything, the entire deep state was against him, but he didn't start any wars. That was really good. I want first term Trump back, at least in terms of international relations. Domestically, I like second term Trump. Domestically, at least. I really don't like international what he does, second term Trump, but you can't get everything you want, can you? First term he was a lot better, yeah. Well, domestically, second term Trump isn't that bad. Domestically, if you don't look at anything international, anything like Ukraine, Venezuela, or any Cuba or Middle East or Greenland, or other things I'm not thinking about, yeah. If you take away, if you don't look at the international side of things, second-term Trump is, I think, overall positive. But that international is, oh my God, especially with the Iran war, boy, is it negative.
Mossad was defeated in Iran. Mossad doesn't have information. They have information in terms of where those leaders, political leaders, are living, because basically they're living with the civilians. And you just look at the way that Kharazi was killed. Larijani was killed, the head of National Security Council. They were in civilian building. They killed 500 people in order to kill Larijani in that building.
500 people to kill one leader. Isn't that insane? I mean, someone probably tracked him to the building and they didn't know which apartment he was staying in. So they killed everyone in the building. I'm sure that's what Israel did, because they don't have Carney anymore. They don't have a rock solid source to give them the exact locations of leaders and places to attack. So they probably have much more limited intelligence network right now in Iran. But there was those protests where Iran's leaders walked on the streets, and they probably have someone follow them and managed to track them back to a building, and then they bombed the entire building. Yeah. God, it's a disaster.
We don't have control over the sky. See, we did everything long distance, and we're out of cruise missiles. We're out of the joint standoff weapons. Now we have to go in, and as we go in, we're finding out that the Iranian air defense is very much active. They're shooting down our drones. They hit an F-35.
Loki, I might sound like a conspiracy theorist, but what if Trump took control of Venezuela and their oil, so the U.S. wouldn't be affected by Iran cutting off the oil transportation? It's Venezuela. Yeah, it exports oil, but it wouldn't have that big an impact. It's just part of the general push to control oil in general. Like, the only three countries, oil exporting countries, that the United States didn't control were Venezuela, Iran, Russia. Russia, they were going after Russia through Ukraine, and they're still, well, until the Iran war, they were still going hard on that. Now the Iran war has completely distracted them, but that's a different story. And so Venezuela, they went after, basically because it's one of the big oil countries that they didn't control. And they brought that under their, for now, under U.S. control. And if the United States could get every oil producer under its control, that would be huge leverage against China. It would be leverage equal to China's rare earth monopoly. Like, they could say China, okay, you give us the rare earth we want, or you don't get oil. That's leverage. So I'm sure, big picture, many people in the Pentagon see China as a real enemy, as a real strategic rival to the United States. And so, yes, they wanted to get leverage over China. Like, or if China goes after Taiwan, shut off the oil to China. Yep, that's one thing they were definitely going for. But it isn't working out for them in with regard to Russia. Russia is winning the war in Ukraine, and that winning is accelerating. And once they start their major operation this spring, I think it's going to be a completely different ball game than it's been in the past. Just Ukraine, just in general, continues to get weaker. Russia continues to get stronger, and now it has all this extra oil revenue, and all these extra weapons have been diverted from Ukraine. You're going to see things move at a pace in Ukraine that they haven't moved before in the 4-year war so far. And as to Iran, we've talked about that a lot, and how it's not going the way they want. So, yeah, if they don't control Iran and Russia, they can't leverage anything against China, because those two countries alone, more than enough, take care of all of China's oil needs.
They're causing other planes to break off. We don't have control of the skies that he's implying. We don't know what we're bombing. He has no clue what he's talking about. He's sitting there playing a peacetime war game in his head, forgetting that the people who are executing this war plan, there is no war plan. Everything we're doing today was not pre-planned, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. What I've been saying from day one, biggest criticism of Trump. He said he started this war. Yes, that's the biggest one. Second biggest one is he started this war without a plan to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. You cannot bomb Iran's supreme leader and not have a plan to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. That is guaranteed what Iran's going to do if you bomb the supreme leader, close Strait of Hormuz, and that's going to wreck the global economy completely. So you have to have a plan for that that event that Iran is guaranteed to do, or just don't bomb the supreme leader.
And gentlemen, there is no war plan. We are making it up as we go along.
Yeah, and the proof, absolute proof of that, besides that leaked clip of Trump saying that he expected the war to go on 3 days, that's what he genuinely believed, is that there were no troops on the ground prepared. You don't start amassing troops for war after the war starts, especially if you're the one who's going to launch the first attack. This was a well-planned operation. You would have had like 200,000, 250,000 troops on the ground in the region of the Gulf, ready to go into action the day the Supreme Leader died. Because that 24-hour period, right after the Supreme Leader died, is when Iran's going to be at the most disorganized, the most vulnerable. That is the perfect time to begin a ground operation to secure the Straits of Hormuz. It is much more likely to succeed than a month or two later, or several months later, once they've just reorganized and they're just spending all their time preparing for an invasion. Everything, the entire economy is devoted to the war and preparing for being attacked.
So Mackenzie, go to hell. Really? No one should put that man on TV anymore, because what good is he? He's not telling the truth. He's implying that this is a plan. There is no plan, McKenzie, and you know there is no plan because the plan you executed, which I know intimately, didn't involve us waiting 3 weeks to start putting forces in. We would have gone in on day one.
Exactly.
Blowing the crap out of the shore defenses, pushing in, seizing territory, pushing in further. But, you don't take a MEU and push in too far. If you know anything about Marine expeditionary units, the first MEU will come in and seize the initial objective. Then another one has to come in behind it. But normally you have to park 2 more. So you need 3. That's a brigade. You need another brigade to come in and push more inland. So now you're talking about a division's worth of troops. We don't have that. We have 2 MEUs.
And everything he's talking about, that was before the era of drone warfare. Russia doesn't use these tactics anymore. They use small man teams sneaking past into the enemy defenses, identify enemy locations, drone operators. Then Russian artillery and drone operation raiders target those identified enemies, and you slowly secure the battlefield that way. And it's a very, very, very slow process, inching forwards. Big movements, like he's talking about, like battalions going in, seizing territory. Yeah, that's like suicide in the era of drone warfare.
You think they're going to do what? Push in? They're not pushing in. They're going to die. And what, you're going to bring in paratroopers? God bless the airborne. But you know what? They'll just jump in and die. Think Arnhem. Think 1st British Airborne Division.
Iran is a heavily entrenched and fortified enemy, armed, I guarantee you, with FPV drones. It's going to be a nightmare for any army to go against, even the U.S.
That's what will happen to any paratroopers going. Rangers, they will die. Delta Force, let me, guys, give you just a little brief secret about Delta Force in Desert Storm. They were put into Western Iraq. Every single insertion was detected as it happened. They were compromised. They didn't spend, this wasn't Delta Force stealthing around. They were running for their lives from day one. They ran. They were running, fleeing. Brave guys. I'm not putting them down. But to think that we're sitting there, you're going to go into it.
It doesn't matter how brave you are. If you're outnumbered 10-1, you run.
Iran, and we're going to control anything. We will control nothing. Nothing, because there's no plan. What makes a military unit professional isn't just the training of the troops and the quality of the leadership. It's the quality of the plan, and the plan involves logistics. A whole bunch of other.
This is my point to anyone who's like claiming, well, the U.S. is the strongest military in the world. Why are we struggling against Iran? Because how things happen matters. Whether there's a plan or not matters. If you could start a war with Iran thinking it'll be over in 3 days, and you don't have any plan beyond that, of course it's going to go badly for you. Especially when the enemy, Iran, has prepared for this scenario for 20 years, gaming out every possible contingency. And that's the enemy you're against, that Iran, that ultra-prepared Iran, and you have absolutely no plan? You may be the mightiest military in the world, but that's a terrible situation going to war. And then you have to factor in, like, geography. Iran is a fortress country. It's all mountains. It is, it's honeycombed with military bases within those mountains. It's in terms of any country on earth, like the hardest country to take. Okay, except for countries that are harder: China, Russia, United States, then Iran. That's really what I would say. Like the 4th hardest country to take militarily, probably Iran, just because of its geography, its size and geography. And Switzerland is similar to Iran in terms of being a fortress nation, but it's much smaller, so it's easier to take. And Iraq was a cakewalk in comparison. If you just look at the map, all flat here in Iraq. It's just the only mountainous place in Iraq is this little corner up here. Whereas all of Iran is basically one huge mountain range. The only flat place is a little bit here, and that's where Tehran is. It's 93. It's a nightmare to take.
There's stuff that just isn't happening. We are literally making it up.
Oh, yeah. India also would be harder than Iran because of just its population.
go along. There is no plan, and McKinsey knows it. McKinsey should
so-
understand
so
there is no plan.
Here's the interesting part. So you have just very cogently and passionately laid out what is necessary if there was a plan, and if you were going to make effective use of ground troops, you would have to have all those things: numbers. You would have to have training and logistics and a plan to go along with it. If you had that, then you could say that could potentially provide some leverage for negotiations and for diplomacy, as it turns out. Well, our former chief diplomat, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, apparently doesn't know any of the things you just said, because here he was talking about how just the presence of physical boots somehow magically gives diplomacy a chance.
But you also move them there for security troops safe that are in the region. So there's lots of radar systems, counter-air systems that are being moved into place.
Iran, population 93 million, 2 million strong armed forces on the ground. 1 million of that army, 1 million of that militia. What is 10K troops going to do? What could they possibly take that could make a difference? To open Strait of Hormuz, you need to take this entire coastline. Any part, even if they control over here, they can still send drones and attack ships this way and shut down stuff. Same thing here. Attack this way, this way and sink ships. So you need to take like over here so ships can, if they, this distance, probably they'd be okay. So this entire coastline. And you have to take the mountains behind it that can see the sea also. So that they have no easy vantage point to visually see the Straits of Hormuz and be able to see ships. You need at least 250,000 troops to do that. 10, 20,000, there's no chance. And also, you need to be able to take casualties. If it's an unpopular war like this in the United States, with no ability to take casualties, where you have to spend all these resources rescuing one pilot, you go this much crazy to prevent the capture or death of one pilot, you're that desperate. That's a country that can not afford to take any casualties. How can that type of country take the Straits of Hormuz or open it? Even if they could get the amount of forces required in region, the 250,000, we don't have a political will to take 3, 4, 5, 6,000 deaths, which would be the minimum needed to retake the Straits of Hormuz in the era of drone warfare.
As well, you do move it there for a purpose of leverage and negotiation. Mr. Witkoff's position is much stronger when there's a bunch of Marines sitting on your doorstep. This is not time to pull back. They still have systems. You can see they're still able to fire rockets, missiles, not only from the Houthis and from Hezbollah in Lebanon, but directly from Iran, threatening our allies in the region, the Gulf states, the Emirates. We need to take down this system entirely.
I'm sorry, I about lost it there.
I love how we have 3 U.S. ships. It's been 3 the entire war that are stuck in the Persian Gulf. They have no chance of getting out. They're just there. They can't go anywhere. They're just they're hugging the far coast as far possible from Iran, and trying not to get shot by drones. And they've no way to leave, and they're just stuck there. And it's funny. He has all the rest of the ships in gray, but those, he has them in blue. Okay, it's because of the type of ship they are. But to me, it's those are trapped ships.
To take down this system.
They're not going to go to a U.S. port for a long time.
Entirely.
I'm sorry, I about lost it there because Gary had a new warning system for Pompeo, which was perfectly self-appropriate for what the world he said there, because he's saying that last part there that we have to take down the system entirely. And as you just said, you would need at least a brigade, 3 separate views to take even one piece of terrain. And he's talking about taking down the whole system. I mean, literally, what in the hell is going on with the senior echelon of our country?
All U.S. Troops are super soldiers worth 1,000 men, right?
Intellectually.
We've been imbued with arrogance and ignorance. It's a horrible combination. Because the ignorant, arrogant, you get people like Pompeo. Again,
that's a great way actually to refer to Trump. Ignorant and arrogant. It's in so many other areas it doesn't really matter as much. Like Trump has made a lot of mistakes and stupid decisions, and then he's tacoed out of them. He's okay. Someone goes in afterwards, explain to him why that's an absolutely idiotic mistake and why he has to reverse course, and then he does it. That's why there's Taco Trump, the Taco Tuesday. Trump always chickens out. Problem is, after you bomb the supreme leader of Iran, and someone goes in to explain how fucked you are, there is no way to chicken out. There's no way to taco. There is no off-ramp. That is a mistake that is absolutely catastrophic and presidency ending. It's the one type of mistake that every president should, it's their job to make sure they don't do, because they're finished if they do.
Again, Americans understand, we're the best when we have a just cause. I mean, we sort of need a just cause to get anything else in that. Like right now, even if we were military proficient, which we're not, this isn't a just cause. This would be the equivalent of cheering on the Nazis. Yes, I said that because we are.
Okay, that's an exaggeration. He's saying that because Nazis started wars of aggression. Yeah, but the Nazis didn't just start wars of aggression. They also did a little thing called the Holocaust. And so comparing the United States, you can't just compare them to Nazis, because the United States isn't rounding up an ethnic group and putting them in gas chambers. So don't compare the United States to Nazi Germany, please. Thank you.
Are committing a war of aggression. That's the same crime that the Nazis were hung by the deck after Nuremberg. We're committing the same crime, the exact same crime. But you have to have military proficiency here. You have to have Marines sitting on a ship, unable to project power forward. Nobody's scared? You think the Iranians are scared of 4,000 Marines? They're not.
Marines, you have heard the Iranian president making claims. We're waiting for them. Come invade us. When asked a question about ground invasion, and I guarantee you that is what the Iranians want. They so far they've had U.S. bases that have mostly been empty of troops. Aircraft carriers. One of them, as last I checked, was here, way out here, so like from away from them. Gerald Ford was way out here. Or at another time it was here. It's way far away from Iran. U.S. military ships have been just avoiding Iran, and our bases mostly evacuated when they were hit by Iranian drones and missiles. And so they haven't had an opportunity to inflict high casualties on the United States yet. We send in thousands of troops. That's the opportunity they've been waiting for. They are absolutely furious about what's been the killing of their Pope, their supreme leader, about the damage to their country. The schoolgirls on the first day, they're furious about that. And you're going to have, they're going to swarm over any landing site of U.S. troops, and they're going to, yeah, it's not going to be good.
Not scared. I mean, the Iranians just say, please bring them.
Exactly.
4,000 Marines, no matter how well trained they are, have zero combat capacity when it comes to meaningfully.
Well, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of Iranian soldiers converging on any location where these 3,000 Marines land.
Affecting the outcome of this battle. None. They'll just all die. It would take us 900,000 to 1.2 million troops to physically defeat the.
Yeah, that's about right. Yes, Iranian have more, like 2 million, but we have air supremacy or air dominance. Like mostly, they don't have anything in the air. They will have drones. That's the era of drone warfare. So there's no such thing as complete air dominance. But still, we have the advantage when it comes to the air, and that makes a huge difference. So 2 to 1. Which is what that is, what he's talking about there, like 2 million versus 2 million in Iran sides of fighters. We could win that. But, yeah, we need that many to have a chance.
The Iranians, if we could do it.
And it would still be incredibly hard because it's, like I said, a fortress country. Fortified with secret passages in all the mountains and stuff like that. If you think Israel had problems in Gaza against Hamas because of all their secret tunnels, Iran is that, but an entire country of secret tunnels, of hidden passages, of where they're suddenly flanked by the Iranian forces because they popped out of the ground somewhere else. It's not just missiles they'll be doing that with if we invade on the ground. there'll be a
I don't think we can, because we'd have to project this power. Again, Curly, you know this. You know what it means to put a division on the ground, and every kilometer forward it complicates your logistics sustainability, your ability to maintain. Tanks just don't keep driving; they break down.
And Iran, logistically, is a nightmare again because of all those mountains. You can't. These mountains here too high for helicopters to fly over. Just to give you one idea, so you can't supply here if helicopters need to go all the way around. You can't drive trucks over a mountain, and if Iran blows up bridges as they retreat, or my God, it's just a complete logistical nightmare.
They need to be repaired. Engines need to be overhauled. Where do you do that in combat? There's a whole system that has to go in. It's not just about putting boots on the ground with guns. You got to put things on the ground. You got to put fuel. You got to put all the stuff that makes stuff work. And that means you have to have planned it. It has to be there ready. And you have to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Because, my God, if that LSD comes in with your stuff that you're going to use and it gets hit and blows up, you better have that spare LSD coming in with the spare equipment, because that's what you need to win this war. We don't have any of that going on right now. This is a tragic joke. The only good news is I can't believe there's a military commander out there who would execute any of the orders people.
Well, yeah, that's why you've had several generals get sacked, is because no general wants to be the one in charge when this ground invasion happens. Getting sacked is better, is less damaging for their career than to be the one who carries out Trump's order to do a land invasion in Iran. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for my Iran section for today. Please like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.